Hi everyone, I'm James from Frameline and welcome to Frameline44. I hope you've been seeing a lot of great films. I really loved Rialto. So we're going to have a great Q&A with the director and the lead actor right now. If I can bring them on screen. Excellent. Can I get you both to introduce yourself?
I'm Tom Vaughan-Lawlor and I play Colm in Rialto.
Hi there, I'm Peter Mackie Burns. I'm the director of Rialto.
Brilliant. Congratulations, both of you. It's just a really impressive film. You must both be so proud of it.
Yeah, really proud. It's funny, it was yesterday, a year ago, we had our world premiere at the Venice Film Festival. So that was an amazing start to the journey of the film being seen, and we've been to lots of festivals around the world, and now we're here at Frameline, and that's really exciting.
I'm so pleased. And I'm just really curious to both of you, maybe starting with Peter, how did you find this project? I know it was a play first, and I know that Mark wrote a great script, and I love his script for his other film, Vita, as well. And I guess, Peter, how did you find this project?
Hi, James. Hi, everyone. It's rather a prosaic story, so I'll be very brief. Rialto is my second movie. My first movie, called Daphne, was produced by a company in London called The Bureau. And The Bureau were doing a co-production with a company called Cowtown in Dublin, and they asked me if I would like to throw my hat, as it were, into the ring, to see if I'd be interested in directing a co-production between England and Ireland. And when they told me Mark O'Halloran had written the script, I was very interested because I'm a big fan of his writing. So it was as prosaic as that, really. I read it and I thought the character was wonderful. And as I said, just made my first movie, I think, a year before, and that's where I met Tom Vaughan-Lawlor. And I hadn't managed to delete him from my contacts. And I sent him, and I sent him a text by mistake. Trying to get a younger, less expensive actor to play the role. But then when Tom answered, I thought, oh,
we'll go with him.
Put it down to technology.
And tell me, had you seen the play Trade at all?
No, I never saw the play, and I didn't even know, James, it was a play until I'd already read the script and was in pre-production with it. And when I met Mark and he told me it was based on a site-specific two-hander. And then I read that, actually. I read the play after we were working on the second or third draft of the script. Tom, did you see the play?
No, funnily enough, I was doing a production of Juno and the Paycock with Ciarán Hinds and Sinead Cusack at the Abbey in Dublin, and it was on in the theatre festival at the same time, and people have been talking about it being a very special piece and that it was really two brilliant parts for actors, but I'd never read it and I hadn't seen it, and I was going to read it before we did the film, but Peter wisely dissuaded me from it just because it's a play and we were making a film, so I stayed away from it. But like with I worked with Mark on a docudrama about Hugh Lane in 2017. That was my first time working with Mark, and I'd done Peter's first film, Daphne, and Peter and I bumped into each other at the Galway Film Festival, and he said he was doing it and that would I be interested. But it being Peter and it being Mark, I thought I'm happy to do like a day on it. I thought it would be I would have been happy just for a couple of scenes. I didn't know what the film was about. When I was sent the script and they were talking about the part of Colm, I was, bowled over and just jumped at the chance to play it.
Yeah. And then you went about casting, Peter, for a few other people. How did you find Tom
I worked with an Irish casting director, Amy Rowan, and she found this guy and sent him in. So he came, Tom Glenn-Carney came in and auditioned for the part. And he came in character. He came in with a Dublin accent, with bleached blonde hair, and dressed very much like Jay. And it was only after, and his audition was superb. I have to say, it was absolutely superb. One of the best I've seen. And after he left, I checked over his CV again because his face looked vaguely familiar. And then I realised I actually saw him in Dunkirk, Christopher Nolan's movie. Mm-hmm. And he was almost unrecognisable in a sense. So I thought, wow, what a fantastic range he has. He reminds me, I'm glad he's not here because he would be embarrassed by this, but I think he's got a touch of the young Albert Finney about him.
Wow. Yeah, he certainly was pretty impressive in the film. And Tom, as were you, I hear that you're English, not Irish. Is that correct?
Who told you that?
No, should I be quiet? I read it in a review today, so I guess that reviewer is wrong. Right.
Well, I've lived in England 20 years, so and maybe that's it. And my Irish accent has been quite diluted by marrying an English woman and living in England a long time. But I have lived in England a long time. But I'm from,
and also
I'm
by
from Dublin.
telling reporters you're English.
Yeah.
Listen, whatever it takes, just keep them guessing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know this reviewer. I'll write to him and tell him off.
Okay.
Anyway, making me ask silly questions.
No.
He's in trouble. But either way, the character that you played was really, he was going through a lot. It must have been, a lot to, just embody that character. Do you want to tell us about finding him?
Yeah, well, Peter and I did a lot of work beforehand, and we worked with Mark beforehand, going through the script, and it felt a bit like, because it's such a brilliant part, and there's so much to kind of get into. It felt like being back at acting school, and the amount of research I could do on addiction and on certain parts of Dublin where he was from, and it was just an incredible gift of a part to just completely lose yourself in, and just because I was on set all day, every day, it was sometimes the bigger parts are easier to play because you just have to because you're in it all the time, and because it was so well written, I didn't have to reach for anything, and I was always supported so brilliantly by Peter and the cast. And because he sits at the heart of the narrative, I found it quite, although it was very difficult, I also found it very easy. And it was an incredible experience, and one of those ones that you wonder if you'll ever get that opportunity to play such a rich character again, hopefully. But one of those ones you go, if you don't make the most of it, you'll be kicking yourself for the rest of your career.
Well, you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
It really is. And I'm just curious if any of you wanted to have any comments about the ending and where you think the character is at. I just came up a lot in a lot of comments online and in reviews. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
I could try talk a little bit about this, in that if we see the movie as Colm's journey, it's a man who's made all of the terrible mistakes through grief, and who destroys his family, who becomes, in a sense, the father that destroyed him, and he in turn destroys his son. And what I thought was interesting about the end is that he actually does the right thing. He stands up at the end of the film, and he's open to whoever comes into the door to say he's there. He's now going to attempt to be present in his life. And I thought that was a very strong and kind of unusual ending for a movie. And I think writing, we shot it as written, and I thought it was a really interesting position for him to come to say, right, I'm ready now to face up to Colm is ready to face up to the damage he's wrought and the lives he's destroyed, including his own. And I think it's quite a hopeful ending. Well, at least that was my interpretation, and it was my intention in that sense.
Is there anything you'd like to add, Tom?
I agree. I think the ending is a hopeful. It ends on an upbeat, on an up note, and I think he is that metaphor, that's the rubbish in the back garden that he's always kind of putting off, that he goes back and tries to fix. He physically is clearing the space for some kind of healing and some kind of resolution. Funnily enough, we had this debate about who was at the door, who was coming into the house, and I always thought it was Claire, his wife. And I said it to Monica Dolan, who plays Claire, and she said, "No, fuck that. Claire's gone." So she didn't think it was Claire, and that's fair enough, actually. So it's up to whoever thinks. I still think it's Claire, but Monica thinks it's not.
Yeah, and it sounds like it was an amazing set. Then you all obviously got along. What was it like working on the film?
It was so well cast, and they're all Monica, Tom, the kid. They're so well cast, proper, brilliant actors with no ego, and everyone came in. I think because the material was so strong, the script was so strong, because Peter was so inspiring and dynamic on the set in terms of inspiring us. He's laughing because he's just self-deprecating, but he really did inspire us every day, and that made it a really special experience, because it was all about the scenes, it was all about the relationships, and we were given time and space. We were never rushed for the big family scenes, the big scenes between Tom and I. Peter factored that into the schedule, so we were never rushed, and we were given a chance to get as close to the hidden truth as we could, and so that was very special.
Yeah. And Peter, was there any scene in particular that really blew you away filming?
Oh goodness, that's a good question. I think maybe for different reasons, we tend to remember different moments when we're making the film. So I suppose for me, it's always little small details that the actors bring to their performances that, often aren't thought about and are unconscious and are in the moment. So there's not one particular whole scene that I can remember off the top of my head, but I remember fragments of moments when the actors inhabited the character and I felt like they were living, they were three-dimensional beings. And people invariably ask about the more intimate scenes, the sexual scenes. And it was really interesting because those scenes are often quite technical, and they were fairly straightforward to shoot. It's the tiny little scenes that perhaps there's no dialogue and there's an emotion or a mood that the character creates, or how they respond to something that's live. Those are really, for me, the fleeting moments, the hard to grasp ones, and they only come every now and again, and there's no knowing how or when those moments will appear, and those for me are always the most exciting ones.
That's beautiful. And I guess, Tom, is there a particular scene or part of the film that you just love?
I kind of loved the I found we shot all the family scenes together in the house, kind of, and I found those the hardest. I think because he's so repressed and he's so hidden, and his addiction has brought such weight to the house. It really felt like that. And as he says with Jay, there's no lies between us. He's very free. I loved the scene where he goes to visit him in his flat, and they, after the funeral, and they have this cup of tea, and he sees that Jay's baby is there. I found that we shot that over a day, and it's just those scenes that are gifts for actors, where you can just sit and be in a scene and listen to the other actor and just kind of just live it, and kind of how we had a baby on we had a baby on set, but we had and just having the baby there and kind of the baby being there, it just kind of blew me away, going in and seeing this baby, and kind of Tom, who is so kind of gorgeous looking, kind of standing in the doorway, beautifully lit with this baby. It was kind of it was so impactful. Those are the moments as an actor, you just don't need to act. It's just like, and the design, the look of the flat, and the costumes, the colors, it just kind of, things are just kind of popping out at you, and the text is so rich, you don't have to reach for it. Those days are magical for an actor, I think, when all those things come together, and that was a really special day.
Yeah, I enjoyed that day too. It was great having the baby on the set, or two babies. It was great having them on set, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really special.
And the film has such a sense of place. Like, I know a lot of people also talk about the shot at the docks when the character's looking down from up above. It just feels so grounded in that space. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Rialto and that part of the world?
Well, Tom, you're a you're a Dubliner.
Yes. Well, the thing I love about watching it as a dub, or someone who was born and raised in Dublin, is that the film has Dublin as its landscape, but Peter's kind of aesthetic feels very European, and so there's a kind of a really interesting hybrid of kind of Dublin and old Dublin, kind of mixed with this European visual style that I've never seen before in a film, and that really, for me, I as a viewer, I found that really rich and evocative, and a different Dublin to what I'd seen. So while it is set in Dublin, it doesn't feel like a specifically Irish film to me, and I'm really proud that it has that kind of hybrid. I think that makes it a very rich film visually.
If I could say something, thanks, Tom. I'm embarrassed today with all of these compliments. If only you said some of them at the time. If I could say something about the area of Rialto, Rialto, well, Mark O'Halloran lives now, is an area in the south inner city, Dublin, which had a terrible heroin problem in the 80s. It's also a settled community. It's been there for a very long time. And what I thought was very interesting about this story was that it shows a man who's left his working class neighbourhood and moved to a more affluent middle class suburb. And he belongs really in neither of those two worlds. He traverses between his childhood home and his middle class family life, and he's not comfortable in either of them. He doesn't belong to either of those. So I thought, when I was making the film, we were choosing the locations. We chose the actual locations for the movie that the character would frequent, would traverse, and geographically, we tried to shoot the film in sequence, in the order that the events would happen as much as possible. So the sense of place for me is interesting. I'm really quite interested in architecture and sociology, and this confluence of how modern and ancient history sit upon each other, and the confluence of those elements influence everything, how we live, how we see our relationship with place. The docks, again, another area, was absolutely fascinating to me, it being a seaport, and you know the seaport has romantic connotations around the world. You know, San Francisco, you know, Seoul and Korea, Dublin, Amsterdam, Rotterdam. Sorry. So the idea of seafaring, of escape, of freedom, linked to a man who is very contained and closed, and the shipping containers, again, you know, a metaphor for a man's sealed emotional life. And I thought it was very, very visually and thematically rich, and a good thing to explore, I thought.
What drew you to take on such a tough subject matter? I know it's a great script, but it's a really tough thing to tackle. Do you want to talk about that at all?
I can, or Tom, do you want to? I mean, I'm happy to. I wonder if you heard enough of me droning on there. I suppose, why does one want to tackle something in a film? Why put your heart and soul and your sanity and your life into a project? I think it must be because there's something in it that you think will speak to people. And that was the reason that I was attracted to the character in the world. A person in crisis, a person making lots of mistakes, a person drowning through the bad choices they've made. You know, sorry to mix my metaphors there. But someone who's in a very difficult place that most people might not even realize, you know, an ordinary man, you know, someone you might pass by every day going to work, someone who may sit next to you at work when we did such things, who have tumult and chaos and heartache and tragedy and life wringing them out. And you wouldn't even know to pass them by in the street. So I thought this combination of a complex character who on the surface appears rather stoic, but inside there's a tumult going on. That's why I wanted to make the story, to try to speak to people who may have recognised that perhaps in their own lives, and also in a way for men that aren't comfortable dealing with their emotions, who can't speak about them. And I thought, well, that's a very interesting subject to talk about, where the two men in this, both fathers, find an arena to be able to talk about their feelings. And it's a very flawed arena, and they're very flawed characters, and it's a very flawed environment. However, there's a possibility of growth in there. And those are the reasons why I was attracted to the material.
Great. And Tom, did you have any opinions there?
Peter's put it brilliantly, and I can only speak as a performer. As a performer, I've played a lot of kind of extrovert, violent, kind of high tempo characters in my career, and this was a real opportunity to go the other end of the scale and play someone who is invisible and self-hating and very low key, and that stretch as an actor, that opportunity to kind of exercise that muscle and visit that kind of that landscape was really appealing. And I think this whole idea of I suppose masculinity changing and culturally masculinity, maybe the perception of masculinity being not as seen to be as something as kind of overtly aggressive or macho, and also the film also speaking to that, I really value and enjoyed.
Wow. To, I guess, a lighter subject then. Just a little bit about that Venice premiere. Like, that's an incredible place to premiere a film. It's just wonderful. It must have been amazing.
Oh, it was fantastic, I have to say.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
Like, it was properly incredible. You know, on the Lido, the water taxi. It was, you know, just really special. One of the highlights of my career, and it just, I'd say the same for Peter, just really special and a great way to start the journey.
I got a chance to bring my red raincoat.
Yeah, it was great.
and my long knife. It was extraordinary to go to Venice, and of course, the movie being called Rialto attracted lots of Italians who were slightly bemused. But honestly, it was a extraordinary environment to see this small independent film, you know, from Dublin, one of the leading festivals, you know, in the world, and it was a joy. I'd happily go back.
Yeah, it's about as good as it gets for a film.
Yeah,
it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it was pretty
Really
good.
good.
It was pretty good.
Just we'll wrap up now because it's been a little bit of time. But I just thought I'd ask both of you what you're working on at the moment and anything else you're looking forward to project-wise that may be coming out. Starting with you, Peter.
I've had a very busy lockdown in terms of writing. So I have 2 movies that are at draft stage just now. One is at first draft stage and one is second draft stage now. So I'm hoping one of those will be ready and financed, and hopefully I can start shooting it next year.
That's wonderful. Tom?
I keep asking Peter for a part in his next film, but he's like, I'm trying to be his, like, you know, whatever, his you know, I was in his first film, I was in his second film, I'm trying to get in his third one. He's not really having any.
Sorry, Tom, I can't hear you.
But I'm currently in Belfast, isolating in a hotel. Just before lockdown, I was doing a TV show for Amazon, and it was halted by COVID. So we're now back in Belfast to shoot it, but I've got to isolate for like a week, so I can't leave my room. I can leave my room to go for a walk or a run, but other than that, all our food is delivered to the house or to the door. And my wife, we've got 2 kids, and my wife's back in England on her own, cursing me for having room service and, you know, Mubi. So, you know.
Indeed. Look, thank you both so much. I know our audience just love this film. So just, you know, big thank you from them. And thank you so much for doing this wonderful Q&A with us. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, James. Thank you.
James, thanks. And thanks to the festival. It's a great honor to be there. You know, it's a huge festival. And I'm absolutely delighted that we found an audience that and maybe not enjoy the film, but certainly respond to it.
They'll definitely respond to it.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, both of you. Have a lovely
Thanks, James.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
festival.
Thank you. Bye.